Hello, friends, and welcome into Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast, quarterbacks and tight ends for Week 15, the fantasy playoff run. We're going to be going through the top 12 at each position. A little bit of streamy talk that'll be happening outside of that, outside of the top 12 guys, and hopefully answering some questions that you guys are going to have. There are some tight quarterback questions, gentlemen. I'm Chris Welsh. That is Pat Fitzmaurice and Andrew Erickson. I've got one. How about I'm going to throw you guys one right now? I'm going to throw you one in our Fantasy Pros Guillotine League, where I'm the representative of you guys, because we've got like devs versus content, and we're going into the finals. I have both Drake Maye and Matthew Stafford in our consensus ECR ranks. Matthew Stafford is 2, Drake Maye is 3. I hate the thought of sitting Drake Maye, but I have Matthew Stafford in going against Detroit right now. Erickson, what side are you going on as a co-owner of the Content Representative Guillotine Championship?
You picked the wrong two analysts to ask a Drake Maye question versus Matthew Stafford. So
I'm
asking
asking
Drake Maye.
Fitzy?
Drake Maye.
I've got Stafford ranked higher this week.
So
I know this is an offense to my fellow Drake Maye disciples, but yeah, no Brian Branch for the Lions. Is like Kirby Joseph has been banged up. I don't know if he's going to play. Tyrion Arnold, like their secondary is kind of a mess, and that game is going to be a high flying shootout. So I just feel like the offensive environment might be a little bit better in that game. I don't know.
That's what I'm thinking. Well, here's the cool thing. You guys listening probably don't have that question, so that's why I could ask it at the top. You're not like, do I start Drake Maye or Matthew Stafford? But we are going to be hitting some quarterbacks, so there are going to be some questions for. Usually the top end of any of these positions aren't big ones. There's a massive conversation to be had around tight ends as well. With the Phillip Rivers situation, we're going to talk about Tyler Warren. And just a piece of news that came down today as we're recording this, Jayden Daniels is officially out. He will not be cleared, so Marcus Mariota is going to be the starter. He wasn't in the conversation, and maybe that was because of the question marks of if Daniels would play, but neither one of these guys were in the questions of the top 12. But some moving and shaking, man. There's some moving on some of these positional things. So hopefully we are going to get you guys covered with all of it. We're going to jump into quarterbacks here in a second, but giveaway time. If you want a chance to win the ultimate symbol of fantasy football glory, the Fantasy Football Championship belt, courtesy of our good friends at Trophy Smack, the #1 destination for epic fantasy football hardware, then this is your moment. This massive gold-plated belt is built to make a statement. It's bold, it's heavy, and it's guaranteed to turn heads in your league. Don't just win your championship, wear it. To enter, all you've got to do is subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Do it right now. Drop a comment below on any of our videos. Suggestion, if you're here listening to this, do it on this video. Make yourself in life a little bit easier, and that's it. We'll be announcing a winner right here on the channel, so make sure you turn on notifications. Don't miss your chance to win this championship belt and flex it on your entire league. Or make it part of the league. You can be like a superstar. You win that belt, you bring it, say, hey guys, this is going to go to the championship. You're going to be the big winner. So look at that. All right, quarterback ranks. Let's take up the big board here. Your top 12 for the week. We've got Josh Allen coming in at number 1, going up against New England. Matthew Stafford and Drake Maye both mentioned. That's your 2 and 3. Joe Burrow at 4, Jalen Hurts at 5, Lamar Jackson at 6. The bottom half got Dak Prescott, Jaxson Dart, Patrick Mahomes, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, and Trevor Lawrence. I do think there's going to be people concerned about Lamar Jackson. I think there'll be questions that are going to pop up. I do think there's going to be questions for people around Patrick Mahomes and just his overall production. I understand all those viable questions. At the end of the day, I think they're relatively chalky unless you are going to come to us of, hey guys, I have Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes. So it's not something, my whole point of this, we're not going to sit on that. But let's talk about Jaxson Dart. Jaxson Dart is kind of thrown in this mix. I mean, look at the sandwich there. You got Dak Prescott on top and Patrick Mahomes on the bottom, and then Jaxson Dart's right in the middle. It's a really good matchup. It is actually the only 5-star rating in our top 12 quarterbacks of any going up against Washington. He is quarterback 8. And you two gentlemen are a little bit on opposite ends. Fitz, you are even more positive. You have him as the 6th rated quarterback. Can I take a guess? Do you have him above Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts?
I have him ahead of Lamar Jackson.
Okay, I knew it was one of them.
and directly ahead of Lamar, directly behind Jalen Hurts.
Okay, so then who's the quarterback that? Because if he's 8, what is your 5, 6, and 7?
Sorry. So 5, 6, 7 is Hurts, Dart, Lamar. I've got Dak at 8.
Okay, Dak. Okay, that's what my brain. I was trying to process like where Dak was on there. Okay, so not about Dak here, but you're even higher on Jaxson Dart. So let's hear the selling pitch.
Yeah, it's just so they wanted him to be a little bit less aggressive as a runner, and his rushing volume is slightly down since the firing of Brian Daboll, but Dart is still averaging 6 rushing attempts and 47.3 rushing yards per game in the 3 games under interim head coach Mike Kafka. And he's run for a touchdown in 2 of those 3 games and has 6 touchdown runs in his last 6 games. So still a lot of rushing value that we're squeezing out of Jaxson Dart. And then you've got this positive passing game matchup against the Commanders, who rank 29th in DVOA against the pass, have the worst opponent passer rating in the league, are averaging a league worst 8.6 opponent yards per pass attempt. So it's a awful pass defense. Dart can make plays in the passing game, and we know he can make plays with his legs. So he's a confident start for me this week.
Now, Erickson, you've got him a little bit lower than ECR at 10. You still have him as a QB1. That's all positive. I'm guessing there's got to be a matchup or two that was lower that you just fell in love with, or is this about just a hesitation that Jaxson Dart's upside is really like what we're kind of making it out to be?
Well, I'm a little bit more concerned about the designed rushes for him, because in his first game back, after missing a couple of games with the concussion, he had 0 designed rushes against the Patriots, and that coincided with his worst fantasy finish of the year, which he was QB 21, 13.6 fantasy points per game. It's not like the Patriots defense has been shutting out opposing quarterbacks. Now, they're not as bad as the Washington Commanders, so that's why you still have him as a top 10 guy. He's top 10 in my rankings as number 10. But I don't want to just ignore the fact that he's not going to get design rushes. Like, they're not calling, hey, Jaxson Dart, QB run up the middle for a touchdown. So a lot of his production has been tied to rushing touchdowns. And if they're not calling his name at the goal line, and it has to be a scramble, well, I think that hurts him a little bit. So that's just why I'm a little bit lower.
All right, 2 quarterbacks that did not make the top 12, and at least on ECR, and kind of seeing where they're at, because I think this is where, I mean, looking at this list, I kind of think, I want to say Purdy should be a question, but Purdy's probably not, because it's Tennessee. People will just, plug their nose and go. Goff against the Rams is probably another plug your nose and go, and Trevor Lawrence has been good. So you could argue that maybe the questions start around like 9 or something like that. All of those are half decent matchups, but then you get into this world of a couple quarterbacks that are going to be in heavy conversations, and Baker Mayfield is one of them. He is actually ECR 13, so just missing this list, but both of you guys are a little bit lower than ECR. So Erickson, does Baker Mayfield belong in the tier of Trevor Lawrence, or is he the start of like another tier?
I think he's the start of another tier for me. Okay. I feel pretty confident about Trevor Lawrence facing the New York Jets, terrible defense, and Lawrence last 9 games, 1 finished outside the top 15 quarterbacks, and that was at the Houston Texans, who we all know shut down every single quarterback. So Trevor Lawrence, I feel like pretty confident starting this week against the New York Jets. Mayfield is where you run into some question marks just because he hasn't been a top performer in recent weeks, but he is getting Mike Evans back. So I think that matters. I think that he's appropriately ranked in that ECR QB 13. I have him at 14, but to me, it's like him versus Darnold versus Stroud, where these guys that are kind of more pocket passers, but if the Texans and Seahawks are true to their implied team totals, which are massive because they're facing 2 terrible defenses and 2 terrible teams, or at least they should score a lot of points, then you're going to see the quarterbacks possibly benefit from that. So I'm trying to capture that, but I think Mayfield's probably someone I'll move ahead once we get confirmation that Mike Evans is a full go for this week against the Falcons. Yeah, and Fitzy, you're a little bit more pessimistic on Baker, I suppose. You got him at 16. Is there any potential movement for you if Mike Evans is like officially activated, or are you just kind of down in general? I guess this also kind of comes back to that like Egbuka conversation we had in the wide receiver episodes, but what's your take on Baker as a start this week?
So it's sort of both. I've moved him already up to QB 15 with the looking like Evans' return on Thursday night is pretty imminent. So he will go there, but I'm not sure if I'm going to have him any higher than QB 15.
Okay.
It's just like it's going to help for Baker, but man, things have not been good for him for a long time now. Like over his last 7 starts, Baker Mayfield has only had 2 games with more than 200 passing yards and only 1 game with more than 1 touchdown pass. And he's averaged 5.3 yards per pass attempt in those 7 games, which is just a terrible number. So I don't know if Evans alone can sort of shake Mayfield out of this, prolonged slump he's been in.
Now, Erickson kind of alluded to the other guy we were going to talk about. What about Sam Darnold for you, Fitzy? I think Sam Darnold is in that same kind of range, and you were saying maybe Mayfield moves up. So what does that internally do for Darnold, who's going up against the Colts?
So I've got Darnold 1 spot ahead now at QB 14.
Okay.
And I just worry about what the passing volume is going to look like in a game where the Seahawks are favored by 13.5 points. Like as it is, the Seahawks are the run heaviest team in the league. They are the only team in the NFL that's had more runs than passes so far this season. And they've got the 3rd lowest pass rate over expected at -7% on the season. So what happens if the Colts can't keep up in this game? Like I have no concern about Darnold's effectiveness or efficiency. And if we were only counting first half fantasy points for all the quarterbacks this week, I'd probably have Darnold ranked as a quarterback 1. But I am just worried that he throws like 5 or 6 passes in the second half and it winds up with 19 or 20 pass attempts for the game.
Erickson, you were kind of alluding, I think you were saying Darnold over Mayfield when you were originally talking.
I'm honestly still not sure what I want to do with these 2 players, so I'm going to have to go back in the lab and figure out what exactly I want to rank them. I think it's close because the concerns with Darnold are real, but I don't always like following that process where, well, if this team kills this other team, then he's not going to score enough points. And then, Sam Darnold threw 5 touchdowns. And that's why they killed the Indianapolis Colts. So that is always something that's kind of in the back of my mind. But to Fitz's point, the Seahawks do like to run the football. So it's a little bit different from a team that's always very high pass rate over expectation, which really hasn't been the case with the Seahawks. The last 3 games for Sam Darnold, which have kind of been all blowout wins for the Seattle Seahawks. He's been QB 11 and QB 4 in 2 of those 3 games, but against the Vikings and Max Zmer, he was QB 30 in a game where he basically didn't have to do anything. So if we get that same type of game script, well, you just started the quarterback 30 on the week with Sam Darnold, even in a quote-unquote good matchup on paper. So I think I'd probably just lean towards Mayfield over Darnold because I think he feels a little bit safer. A divisional game on a Thursday night, I think it's a little bit more back and forth, a closer spread where at least Mayfield is pushed a little bit more, whereas with Darnold, there are the concerns that, he just doesn't have to do a lot against the Colts and Philip Rivers throwing the ball. So I think I am going to move Mayfield 1 spot ahead of Darnold.
And clearly the number 1 question on everybody's minds, we start in Philip Rivers this week.
the amount of leagues he got picked up in Superflex, you're just like, oh man, this is going to be fun.
Well, legitimately, like if you were in a Superflex, like where does he rank for you guys? I know it's like a joke. There are people out there that are like, would you start Brady Cook or Philip Rivers? Like we actually legitimately saw that question. Like you can't feel super, super confident about it, but like somebody also pointed out, they're like, someone's going to win one of those like Millie DFS contests with starting Philip Rivers this week. Is there any world, Fitzy, where Philip Rivers is anything? Like, cause we're not advocating to starting him. I just wanted to say his name because he's one of the biggest stories that's out there right now. But
I do have him ranked ahead of Kenny Pickett, who is going to
so we have somebody
this week.
All right, excellent. Can I get him over anybody else, or is that your line?
That's my line in the sand.
The
Welsh.
Kenny Pickett line. All right.
So you're going Brady Cook over Philip Rivers? If Brady Cook gets the start. Again, they just said he's getting all the first team reps because Taylor and Fields are not practicing.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out what is the line that a 44-year-old grandfather who hasn't played in 5 years, who is he better than? And we've confirmed Kenny Pickett, so that's awesome. So is it also Brady Cook? That's how bad they are.
That one, I'm going to have to retreat to my lab for
Let's
that
go.
one to cook
Back
that
to
up.
the lab.
Oh my gosh. I told Erickson this. I cannot get Big Daddy out of my head where it's like, hey, old man River, zip it or I'll break your hip. And then the 5-year plan, like all of those bits or some social, like our social team, you got to do something with all that with Philip Rivers. But no, we're not starting him or doing anything with that. But it is the transition to the tight ends. and it is going to be the first guy we're going to talk about. Your top 12 on tight ends, though. Here's the big board. We've got Trey McBride at 1, George Kittle at 2, Brock Bowers at 3, Tyler Warren, yes, that Tyler Warren, in at 4 still. Harold Fannin Jr. coming in at 5, followed by Kyle Pitts, Travis Kelce, Brenton Strange, Jake Ferguson, Dalton Kincaid, Mark Andrews, and Colson Loveland. That's your top 12. Warren. So Warren is in at number 4. You guys clearly hate this from a rank perspective. I've been kind of vocal about this. I don't think Phillip Rivers is going to be great. They can't not have him throw the ball. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 40% target share to Tyler Warren this week. I wouldn't be surprised if Tyler Warren does some stuff on the ground. I think they could gadget some stuff. And I think he is the safety net for yards after the catch. Now, where I could be wrong is he could have 6 catches for 40 yards because Phillip Rivers can't throw more than 9 yards. But I think Phillip Rivers is not going to be looking for massive checkdowns. It's going to be easy things. And I think that really either is going to be some really bad throws to the first read wide receivers, or it is going to be one read check down to Tyler Warren a lot. So I like him still as a top 5 tight end. You both do not. Erickson at 12, Fitz at 9. Erickson, let's start with you. You were barely putting him in as a starter, so I'm guessing you're starting Mark Andrews. I know it's the Bengals. Kincaid, Ferguson. You're starting everybody over Tyler Warren at this point.
Well, I have him tight end 12, so that means he's still a guy you can start. To your point of the things that you laid out, yeah, there is a case and a path where Tyler Warren is still involved in this Colts passing attack. It's a good matchup on paper against the Seahawks, although they are going to get Julian Love back another week from his injury. He's one of their better safeties, so I think that could help kind of stuff out some of these tight end production that the Seahawks have been giving up, so that's one concern that you have to consider. For me, it's just going back to upside, right, with tight ends. And Tyler Warren as a player we know has a ton of upside, especially the way that they can get him the football in space. He can create yards after the catch, but look, if I started Tyler Warren and he went 6 for 60, 7 targets or something like that, I feel like, okay, like that's fine. And last week, that's what TJ Hawkinson did, or excuse me, in week 13, that's what TJ Hawkinson did with Mac Brosmer as his quarterback. And he was the tight end 14 on the week. So I understand your positive case for Tyler Warren, but I don't think that's going to translate to, he's tight end 4 on the week, especially if he doesn't score a touchdown, which is my biggest concern with this entire Colts offense. Look, even if Daniel Jones was the starting quarterback, how many touchdowns would we project for the Colts offense to score on the road against the Seattle Seahawks? So like that is my big pushback, where it's like, dude, I've seen this Bengals defense play some of the worst tight ends and it doesn't matter. Like Likely and Mark Andrews have so much more upside in my opinion than Tyler Warren does, because I mean, Isaiah Likely's basically been a top 3 tight end in the last 2 weeks.
We're going to talk about him.
Get into the end zone and just finish the play. So that's why I have him tight end 12. Again, not someone that I think that you have to downright bench, because for the most part, he's probably still better than most waiver wire tight ends. But I think it's a clear case for everyone I have ranked ahead of him why their upside is just higher.
So Fitz, you got Warren a little bit higher. And I don't know if Warren needs to be 4. In a full PPR, my case is a little bit stronger. Half PPR, it's maybe not. But I'm comfortable with him around 6 or 7, something like that. But what say you on tight end 9 for Tyler Warren?
I really want to talk myself into this premise that a rusty Phillip Rivers, who hasn't played since 2020 and has spent the last 5 years bouncing grandbabies on his knee, is going to be the guy who reverses sort of discouraging trends for Tyler Warren.
Let's do it.
Because over his last 6 games, Tyler Warren has had 1 touchdown and 1 game with more than 53 receiving yards. He's had 26 or fewer receiving yards in 3 of his last 6 games. So maybe this is too low, tight end 9, if it is Phillip Rivers at quarterback. Because I do kind of agree with this premise that like he might be the number 1 go-to guy for Rivers. As of now, I have Tyler Warren behind Trey McBride, George Kittle, Brock Bowers, Harold Fannin, Travis Kelce, Kyle Pitts, and we just found out Drake London is not going to play on Thursday night, Dalton Kincaid, and Mark Andrews, who has that red carpet matchup against the Bengals. But I have Warren ahead of Isaiah Likely, and I'm second guessing that because Isaiah Likely also gets to face the Bengals. So I can't honestly see myself moving up Warren in the TE6 or TE7 range, Welsh.
All right, a couple other tight ends we are going to talk about likely to end. Harold Fannin. Harold Fannin really jumps up. He is tight end 5. You guys are pretty much in agreement here. Obviously, Shedeur looked fantastic in that game, and Fannin is going to be a target going up against the Chicago Bears. Fitzy, why don't you kick it off on Harold Fannin? Why Harold Fannin is exponentially better than like taking a risk on a guy like Tyler Warren too?
Yeah, tight end 4 for me. And maybe I'm overreacting to Fannin's tight end 1 overall finish last week. 8 catches for 114 yards and a touchdown, 25.4 PPR points. But I do think Shedeur Sanders makes Fannin more viable than he was with Dylan Gabriel. And the Browns' other tight end, David Njoku, questionable with a knee injury. And the Browns are facing a Bears defense that's given up the 8th most receptions to tight ends. So I like the spot for Fannin.
Erickson, same thing. I think you have him at you have him at 5. Fitzy's got him at 4. Either way, you guys are just both super high on him. Fannin has moved up into another tier of tight ends, and you seem to agree.
Target leader since Shedeur Sanders took over as the starting quarterback. The targets are really like consolidating around him. You know, Jerry Jeudy gets a couple here and there, but David Njoku is clearly not healthy, continuing to deal with injuries. So if you're getting a past happy game script for the Cleveland Browns, yeah, I like this spot for Harold Fannin. I don't think you need to overthink it. He's a rookie tight end that broke out in the first game of the year and has flashed at points, and it all kind of came together last week. And I think that you just continue to play him.
Brenton Strange is tight end 8 on this list. You guys are both lower than ECR. You both have him though as a tight end 1. It's a good matchup. Trevor Lawrence slings the ball a bunch. We didn't see the big output we thought we would get last week. Erickson, you still have him at tight end 9, so you're like almost essentially at consensus. You're still a full go on Brenton Strange.
Yeah, we got unlucky last week. He had a touchdown call back because of OPI, right? So he would have been fine as a maybe not exactly top 5, but he would have finished much higher than his 3 catches for 27 yards would indicate. And he had multiple red zone targets last week, 6 targets in total. So great matchup against the New York Jets. Again, another player that, why should I start Tyler Warren over Brenton Strange this week? Brenton Strange has been terrific since coming back from his injury. And like I said, if that touchdown just counts last week, I don't think we're even second guessing, like moving him down in the rankings. So he's another guy that I wouldn't really think twice about starting Tyler Warren.
So Fitzy, you got him at 12. You're a little bit lower. And I guess what I wanted to ask was like, do you have him in another, I originally was going to say, do you have him in the tier of Kelsey, but you just like clearly don't. Is he like the start of a different tier of tight ends, or is he maybe the end of that tier that's like Tyler Warren and Ferguson and whatnot?
Yeah, he's kind of the end of that tier for me. I would say, I'd group him with Ferguson likely, maybe even Theo Johnson and Colston Loveland, because I think those guys haven't, maybe even Mike Gesicki I'd put in that tier if T. Higgins is going to be out, and it seems almost certain he would be. Like so Strange came back from his injury and had that 5-catch, 93-yard game against the Cardinals, and everyone kind of just fell in love with Brenton Strange as a mid-range tight end 1. But since then, like I know he had the touchdown called back, 3 catches for 45 yards and the touchdown, 3 catches for 27 yards last week. He's been averaging 5 targets a game since he's been back. He's fine. I just see him as more of a low-end tight end 1 than a mid-range tight end 1, because I don't think he's getting mid-range tight end 1 target volume.
Okay, the final one, I think, is probably the most important because it'll have so many questions attached to it. This is both. We're going to do both of the Baltimore Ravens tight ends because you're going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Mark Andrews comes in at 11. Isaiah Likely is 13. I can see that you both have Isaiah Likely at 11 on this list. The question is, are you Likely over Andrews? And then I guess you already have Likely as a tight end 1, your confidence level. Because I am Likely over Andrews at this point because of not just, Andrews is just touchdown equity. He's the Chris Rodriguez of tight ends. That's all he is. Likely is also some volume with yards playmaking, and he is getting targets from Lamar Jackson. So I am Likely over Andrews, clear. But where are you guys at, Fitz? Likely or Andrews? And both are probably viable starters for you this week, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, you make a really good case, Welsh. I do have Likely behind Andrews right now. And, man, like Likely's had 9 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown over his last 2 games. I do think this matchup makes him a tight end 1. The
with
Bengals,
two of the flukiest non-touchdowns as well. Like the first
Yes.
one, stupid. The catch last week, like if he has those two touchdowns, I think we're talking about likely in a completely different tier because everyone's losing their mind about the touchdown equity and everything. Sorry, didn't mean to like jump.
That's a good point, and it's funny that likely is on this upswing right as the Ravens kind of made their choice and signed Mark Andrews long term, and looks like they're going to let Isaiah Likely walk in free agency. But there's a chance both of these guys can have big days against the Bengals. Bengals have given up to tight ends 97 catches, 1,258 yards, and 15 touchdowns.
It's a Trey McBride season. They make any tight end become Trey McBride.
Oh my God. Like what? It's like a vintage Tony Gonzalez season plus like add another good tight end from a different team and throw that on there. And that's what the Bengals are giving up. It's just crazy.
That is wild. Erickson, same thing. Likely or Andrews, and are both startable this week.
Both are startable this week, and you've convinced me that it should be Likely over Andrews. If Likely catches those two touchdowns, he's a top 3 fantasy tight end in back-to-back weeks. And again, the Cincinnati Bengals made Dawson Knox look like Antonio Gates last week. Dawson Knox had done literally nothing all season, despite having like a pretty good role in the Bills' offense when Dalton Kincaid was missing time. I mean, I think they quoted Dalton Kincaid after the game, and they said, "Yeah, it was a game for the tight ends." And I just wanted to comment and be like, no, it was a game against the Cincinnati Bengals defense. Like, look, we don't always want to overvalue matchups, but when it's so clear that this match, that the Bengals, they just don't care. Like, they don't try to stop tight ends in any capacity. So going back to who has top 5 upside this week, top 3 upside, give me the Ravens tight ends over Tyler Warren. I don't think that it's in his range of outcomes this week. He has to run so hot with big plays, touchdown equity. I don't think the Ravens are going to have trouble finding the end zone this week. And you just got to cross your fingers that Likely can just squeeze the ball into the end zone all the way, get 5 feet in, and we're good to go.
What do you guys think? Likely or Andrews? You can put it in the comments below, and are both startable. That is going to do it for the quarterback and tight end ranks for week 15. Boy, you guys know where to find us. We've got lots of live streams over on Twitch. You can catch us over here on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, and make sure you got the app. All the tools help you out. Become your best friend. And if all else fails, Sunday morning, you can catch us live for a couple hours answering all your last-minute playoff fantasy questions. And you can find us on the socials as well. That's going to do it for Erickson and Fitzy. I'm Welsh. You guys have a fantastic one. Good luck. Hopefully we talk to you next week in the playoffs, and we'll do it right here on Fantasy Pros. Bye-bye.